microcosm of the macro that is actually Chile. So it's, in a way, it's a personal vision of the division that exists in the big in the world. Now, also, for me, it was like very special to actually go and present this film in Chile, because especially right after the coup and after the time where for different reasons people have to get out of there, there was this tendency on saying, if you did not say in Chile, who are you to be telling us in Chile to perspectives that is like, get the, you know, we don't want to hear. And then with time, I think things settle in a different way, and that you realize that we're all more victims of a situation than you think that you are. So yes, it's true that there's some that are, you go from getting killed, tortured, to, so I mean there's a gamma, but we are all, what do you call, participants and victims and perpetrators in different levels. So which also means that it doesn't really matter in what place of the world you are. History is something that is for all of us to participate, to clarify, to understand, and to build some kind of common, clear, true perspective, to have some kind of base to work from there, and to have the courage to just get, you know, the truth under the rugs, and just let's talk about the truth, and let's talk about the variations of truth, and not about fantasies. I mean, and that for me was especially in Chile, to feel the audience like saying, actually one guy said, thanks a lot for the little present that you have brought from out there, which actually was a very nice way to synthesize what doesn't matter where you are, it's really where your mind and heart is. Yeah.
So to follow up on your question, I forgot, sorry, I'm getting up there in years. Basically, the film had a PBS premiere in Chicago, September 17th. And I'm trying to get it on other PBS stations. Anyone here at PBS, you know, it's available. It has closed captioning. But anyway, it's been a struggle to get it out there, and you know, in the U.S. and of course in Chile, Televisión Nacional passed on it, and you know, everyone else did too, except for the museum. So I'm actually distributing it right now in the educational market. You know, can be purchased on the website www.ulisesodyssey.com. Any professors out there, if you want it, you know, it's been taught at the university level at my alma mater. I was so, any Washington, any generals in the audience? Yay! You know, so it's being taught, and to me, you know, to talk to the students, the younger generation, that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm so happy that younger people are watching it and being taught at the university level. Our next film, because of Ulises Odyssey, we're actually, Miguel and I, collaborating in our second film about Maestro Siqueiros. David Alfaro Siqueiros was one of the 3 great muralists from Mexico, and inspired the next generation of Chicano muralists in Los Angeles, and taught Jackson Pollock the dripping technique, if you knew that. So anyway, we're actually making a biography, and because of Ulises Odyssey, you know, even though we never got the funding for it, in the end, you know, it helped us get our names out there, and we're actually almost fully funded, and it's going to be on PBS next year.
Thank you so much for bringing us, again, this gift. I want to take that metaphor. It's very fitting, and I'd invite you to go outside and talk to the guests individually and share the reception we have. I want to thank everyone who worked on this screening. I want to thank the filmmakers. I want to thank the students who are working here to document and share this experience for posterity, and invite you to continue attuned to your productions and to your work, and to follow other film programs and offerings that we have here at NYU and at the Center for Latin American Studies. Thank you very much.
And last thing is, as I started off saying, this was a network collaboration that supported them. If you're a Latino multimedia maker or an actor, we'd like you to join Prime Latino Media. It's free. Have a clipboard. We'd love your name and your email address. But you can also become part of the movement. Thank you again. Good night.
With the whole family relationship, it's always going to be there, and actually probably even more complicated now, because you never know how to predict outcomes. I mean, human relationships, that are complicated, and we all have our different starting points and ending points, and yes, we have different growths and different transformations, but they don't all synchronize in the same way and at the same time. So I guess I would say to do personal films, I think it's very important to do it with some collaborator that helps you give perspective. But also, if you do and you work with personal films, you have to be ready to really go deep. At the same time, I would say that Lorena, I don't think she knew what she was also getting in.
I had no idea.
And I think through the process, I think is also where you prove yourself in the strength and the resilience of just the ending. It probably takes one day to do 80% of the film, and it takes 10 years to finish the the film. I think that's maybe the best way I could summarize of the difficult art of doing this.
But it's also very cathartic. It's also very it's cleansing to confront and reconcile, and that's really what needs to be done. Rather than just throw everything under the rug. So I think it's a process. It's hard, but I don't have any regrets. I wish I had shown my dad more, and actually he's still alive. Maybe next time I'm home I will bring him the Battle of Chile and see what he thinks.
But in a way, isn't that how the dictatorship is a dictatorship? It becomes this, it aims to become the universal truth for territory, right? Yeah. Okay, so we'll take maybe two more, and then, here in the front, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to thank Lorena and Miguel, and bear with me because I'm very emotional right now. So aside from being the ex-wife, I'm also Chilean, and I also lived in Chile during the military coup with Miguel. There are 2 points I wanted to make. One was, I'm a strong believer that violence has 2 victims, the perpetrator and the one being perpetrated on. And I think the movie, to me, keeps reminding me of the reality of Chile, where there are people who did a lot of very violent things to others for whatever reasons, maybe like in the case of my father, who was also a general in the Air Force, or your father, or did things which might have not been to kill directly, but were in some way also, like your uncle said, an accomplice to the situation. Their pain is also enormous. I know that in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been in Chile, some of the media outlets have been releasing information that some of the very young soldiers at the time are coming up with. And it is being presented because of their pain. These people that have been sworn to silence for many, many years are now finally are able to confront, like you say, confront their own suffering. And it is very touching to see, not to justify any of the violence, not at all. I think the military did a lot of damage to our country. But I also feel that your movie, kind of reminded me of the strength that as a community of Chileans that live through this, we must have in order to be able to open the conversation up. And while I'm surprised that the movie has not been accepted because I do know that there's a lot of that going on right now, of people coming up and making, personal statements about their role in the violence and asking for forgiveness, basically, and coming to terms with themselves, in their pain.
But that's new. That's just starting now.
Yeah, I know.
They were ahead of their time.
Yes, and it is new, and that's what I'm saying, that I'm surprised that, I don't know how recent you send it, but it is something that is beginning to open up the conversation, and I think this movie will be very valuable in that process. There was something else I wanted to say, but I can't because I'm too emotional, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Lorena, and thank you, Miguel.
Here.
Thank you very much for making this. I'm curious as to the reaction from the rest of your family to this film, and where do you go from here? Where does your journey go to next? What's your next step?
At the museum in Chile in March, we showed it to Ulises was there. You're always nervous what the reaction is going to be of your loved ones, and you don't want to offend anyone. And it was actually really good. It was a really well received film. People, my Ulises was very happy. I think because he liked to talk a lot. He actually gave a speech like he always does. Went on forever.
Is that on the DVD extra?
No, I think the museum actually
Five DVDs.
And he was very passionate about it. People. The beautiful thing about that screening was that people from the left, and people from the right were there. Everybody loved it, and everybody said this is the first film that unifies us. This is the first film that represents us all. And that for me was the payoff. Everything else is extra. Just to screen it there, and the reaction was incredible. And
I think the other thing that I will repeat, I think it's true that this film is almost like a
disappeared and exiled, and so my family really, we're very lucky in a sense. So I think more loud. Can you hear me? So I wanted to keep it within the family unit. I wanted on a personal note. On a personal note, I really wanted to learn more and more, and I read all the books, and I bought all the books that I found on Amazon in Chile, and every time I go to Chile and go to the bookstores and try to learn as much as possible. And I did talk to other people, and I continue to do so over the years. But for the film itself, I just wanted to keep it within the family unit, and at some point you have to simplify things for storytelling purposes, and that's why. Yeah.
Gotta come around and hit the other side.
Good. So can I start? So I guess it has something to do with what you just said. Well, thank you for the film. So you say, or you show that you were learning how to make a movie while you were doing the movie, right? So I was wondering, what was the role of watching films? We have a great tradition of films about all these issues in Chile. So I'm wondering, so you say you read so many books about it. So watching films and learning from those films, what was the role of those films? And also, so you show your dad, for instance, that book. Did you show films? Did you watch films with any family member? Or so what was the role of film and film tradition in your film?
That's a good question. I watched all of the Patricia Guzman films. the Battle of Chile, which is his first major film. That was, of course, we didn't know anything, growing up in Chile. It's like that film, people didn't even know who he was. So of course, starting from the Battle of Chile, the whole gamut of films were really I was very impressed by them and learned so much from them.
They were banned.
They were banned from Chile, actually. His films were never, the same thing happened to him in a sense, that his films, he would send them to festivals and they were never shown. And he actually was at Cannes and winning awards, like, in the world, and so well-established filmmaker. In Chile, nobody knew about him during my time. Maybe now they do a little more. But in terms of films, no, I never showed my dad. I never showed him any films. I would go to Chile and just kind of work and get what I had to do, and had 2 young daughters, so it's a very limited time that I had to go to Chile. And that's a good point. I really wish I had done that, but my dad did see the film. My mom passed away; she never got to see it, but my dad saw it recently in March when I was there. Of course, he's in his 90s, so I don't know, but he's very, every time that Pinochet would show up he would take his hat off and put his hand in his chest, and so, yeah. But no, I should have shown him, actually, Chile Obstinate Memory and the Battle of Chile, and a lot of, I wish I had, actually.
But if you want to talk about that, I would say, I guess I'm more from the mind that you look at films and you grab all of the information and then you forget it and then you do what you need to do, and that has to seep in through the unconscious.
Yeah, and what I got out of the Patricio Guzman films and all the other films that I watched regarding, I watched a lot of films about the dictatorship, and I think I just got a lot of background. I just was very hungry to understand, very hungry to learn, and get the 2 perspectives. I had only gotten one, and I was very hungry, I should say. So they taught me a lot.
I would like to thank you for this great documentary. It was a very special experience for me, even though I have no previous knowledge on Chilean history at all, or more like Latin American history. But I could still feel very personal and connected, because I guess I come from a divided family in terms of politics. The country that I come from is South Korea. It had a dictatorship because of a military coup, and my dad was deeply involved in the union activity, while my mom was anti-union. I really have no idea how they got married. And the military dictator's daughter ran for the presidency 2 years ago in Korea, and that was my first voting experience. And both of my parents were dying to see who I voted for. And I'm still hearing 2 both very different stories. I've been growing up like that, and I guess I can say I feel you super, to a decent amount. But I was really wondering if you ever hesitated or regretted sharing the information that you gathered with your dad, because it seems like you just said that your dad would still take his head off whenever the Pinochet's image would come on the screen, and I feel like the belief that your dad had was like a lifelong belief that he had, it kind of guided through his life. So I think it must have been a very hard decision for you, and I wonder how Miguel felt about it as well.
That's a really good question, let me tell you. And I'm very to the point, because I think, one thing the first thing I would say, I think Lorena is a very brave woman I think if you do a personal film like this and you really have to have, I'm not sure it's brave, but you really have to be ready to go deep and try really hard to push to corners that you wish not to do sometimes. and the complication that also that brings fathers not up. So it's like a subtle push, harsh push with respect that is my role to keep things going and moving, and yes, a lot of patience actually, because I would say when you do those personal stories, you have to leave a lot of space for things to settle down, because the film cannot go out until, I mean, in this case, she settled down, because it's not about my family, right? For me, it's more of an intellectual, emotional trip.
I wanted to add something there, which is that commitment and that way of knowing when to push. This doesn't feel exploitative. It doesn't feel like you're causing. It doesn't feel like you're pushing for the film. It feels like the film is adapting to the process that the family is going through. And I think, Louis mentioned I work in indigenous film. And indigenous film is often collaborative like this, often takes time like this, often has no budget like this, but is also trying to portray a reality on its own terms. And I think that that's a whole different kind of filmmaking. And this won't be the place to talk extensively about that, but there's also, in these levels of what is transparent and what is a little bit denied or what is sort of pushed to the side, even the components of her family origin, about campesino communities, when I saw the pictures of the countryside, I'm like, these folks are Mapuche. Like, clearly these folks are indigenous, right? So, and you're wearing your billanes, your Chawai, your Mapuche earrings, the whole time. So, these other things are other levels of fracture in our Chilean history. The fact that, even 1 or 2 generations back, or the migration from the country to the city, those produce all kinds of other fractures that Chile has also not dealt with, has also a lot of unfinished business with.
And also one thing that which I think it is kind of a special scene, that the scene where we get stuck in the mud, that was not a made-up scene, that was actually true. And I think what
your fault.
No, actually, I would say Ulises, he's like a hard-headed, no, we can go, yes. So that was not, there was no acting in that, but what was like really special of that accident, or put it, or interruption, is that actually we waited a long time, but the guy that appears, he comes walking, he has to go every day to walk miles and miles to anything, and he's walking there like, oh, you're stuck, oh yeah, let's go, see, let's try, let's push, oh, gonna do it, come to my house, let's go we walk there, and it's like, they open the house, they have one piece of bread, you have no idea how delicious that piece of bread was that night, but they open the house in an incredible way, so it's like, you live like a humanity there with the smell of the wood and all that, that is like, it's like very, I mean, that's true, so in a way, this kind of filmmaking, when that happens, it's like you're not. It's a gift to the film that I hope it comes like that. But it's like there's an incredible humanity and giving. When we were there, actually, I did not get the cameras, and I said no, I have to go and get the cameras to go to film. And we were like, I said I'll go, and then the guy said no, you're not gonna make it. So I said no, I can go, and then he insisted. I followed him, and he knew the whole thing. There was black, no light at all. And I was following him like an animal behind, jumping here and there and trying to land in the same footsteps he did to go from one place to another. And I would have never made it back there without this guy. Because this guy lived, I mean, all you see is stars. It's like, it's a different world. That when you're coming from a different world, and they share everything they have. It's like a really, and also the scene when you see the little girl looking at the TV, is like, then also you see the little TV and you say that's also how they're looking. It's like the world from the outside is getting to them, but the world of them is not getting to the outside. So you also feel the la rabia, the sacrifice. I mean, it was very cold and they come to clean and they put water. And they clean, it's like, everyone would have a cold if you have to do that. So it's like, it's a tough life, but like a very beautiful, and they give everything. It's like just amazing. And the last thing I'll say, and also for them, they were saying to go to school. They're talking, the kids have to walk. miles and miles, cross a river, and they're talking about all the kids that actually fall and drown on the river because all they have is like a trunk of a tree, essentially, even to bury their people. They have to wait for the river to come down in order to cross the river to bury, so they have to like stay and with their dead people waiting for a place to go and bury them. So you also, the conditions in which people live, the conditions that actually are not afforded to them is gets me angry, actually.
Can we fix their audio? Because the microphone is off. The microphone's
Yeah.
off.
Is that working? I don't think so.
Talk.
I think it has to do with the projector being off. Oh, I see. But you can turn it on and leave it on.
Or if you talk a bit louder.
Yeah, we can take another question.
Yeah.
Okay, just speak up.
Bigger room.
I don't know. I guess this one's on. I just want to say thank you for being a Latina or role model for filmmakers. But while you were doing this, did you have any idea in interviewing people that survived through it? Like, because I grew up here in the United States. I'm of Puerto Rican descent, so I know here the only way you could see what's going on in the world, you need to watch noticias or other countries to actually see the truth of things. And I actually just recently started about hearing the events through a family friend that was actually tortured. And he had to escape, and he moved to California, and he actually married into my fiance's family, his daughter. And I've heard the stories and the way he cries and lives through it. It's difficult, and then seeing this, it's shocking because I never thought none of these things happened.
She had a question. What was your question?
Like, did you want to interview more people to hear their stories?
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to keep the film within my family as much as possible. So, you know, my family, we were actually lucky. You know, some families had many family members that were tortured and killed, and, you know.
Patricio Guzman, who is, you know, one of the greatest documentary filmmakers from Chile. He's exiled and brilliant filmmaker, a master, I believe. I was very shy about sending him the film, and you know, being Patricio El Pato Guzman, and I sent it to him, and he was blown away, and he said, you know, send it to all these festivals in Chile. Of course I did, and I didn't get in. And then he said, send it to the museum. I think it's a really great film, and it would be perfect for your film to be at the Museum of Memory and Human Rights. And so I did that. And of course, immediately they were blown away by it. And I am so proud that Miguel and I, we actually were there for the premiere in Santiago and at the Museum of Memory and Human Rights. And it couldn't have been a better screening, full house, people in tears. Ulises was there, the widow of Eduardo, you know, the disappeared a distant member of my family was, she was there, and you know, the little girl that is the one that's supposed to be me in the. And she's also on the poster. She's much taller. She's very tall now, and she was 17, and beautiful girl. And so, you know, it's like going back to Chile. It's like going full circle. And it was, yeah, of course, for me also to be here in New York and have a New York premiere, and in an academic environment, it's actually probably means a lot more too. You know, I think that it's important to teach this history and to teach it through the people that lived it. You know, maybe not so much the academics that teach it, but the people that lived it. I think it's important, and it's very valuable. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Can you
Tell us a little bit about your score, your beautiful music.
Oh. Tell you about the musical score.
You played all these
I
instruments.
played it, yeah. Well, I started a lot with music, so music actually it's like an integral part of me. So to tell a story, more and more, I also work with animation. I work with photography. I work so suddenly, for me, telling stories or participating in telling stories is like my brain just jumps from one to the other, and I build things as they go along, which is I enjoy working that way, because like one part, like the musical part inspires the visual part, and the visual part inspires the what do you call the story. Now also coming from Chile, I mean, there was a good chance to use the panpipes, the charango, and all of the instruments that actually are part of there. And the lullaby actually that you hear at the end, that I composed for my son when he was just born. As a father, I did not know how to explain something that is very difficult to explain. So I thought that through a song I was able to kind of actually I'm not sure if the end of the final words actually are not there, but the final words are sleep, my little boy, sleep good, because tomorrow you have to wake up to change the world. So that's the essential meaning of the. This is Marisa, my ex-wife, but the mother of of our kid, and we're good friends.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll take maybe 2 or 3 questions from one side of the room. They'll have a chance to respond, and then we'll take a few questions from the other side of the room. So our Brendan doesn't have to walk around chasing you down. Okay, Andrea.
Hello. First, I just want to thank you very much for that, and for you guys for bringing it along here to NYU. I'm from Chile as well, and I was probably not even a thought by the time that the coup happened. But I have been delving into my family's history, and similarly, they've been very much divided. My mom is one of 5, and my family grew up in Santiago during that entire time. And what kind of advice do you have for someone who is also delving into a very personal history with their family, and do you think that it helped you grow and heal at all?
Personal films are really difficult. Really, probably the hardest films to make. You just pace yourself, get a lot of support, emotional support from your friends and family, and if everybody has a story to tell, everybody has important stories to tell, and you just do it. As hard as it is, it may take 10 years, it might take 20, but you just do it, and be patient.
In that way, I would say Lorena is like a very valiente, I say, courageous. And then I think one thing that I meeting her when she began the first part of the film, she thought she was done. But after we show and we talked, essentially what she had done was the first part, only one, because she was like so into more the story of Ulises in a certain way, and she was so impressed about what happened to her uncle and all that, that suddenly with time, as she probably grew, and the film began to make sense in different ways, I think it was more the story of where is she in all of this story, and where is other people in the family in the whole story, and that took also a lot of courage to go back and really go deep into dwelling into things that it's difficult to dwell, but if you don't do it full, then don't do it. You really need to go all the way in. And I would say it's also really good that you find a collaborator, someone that can help you give the kick in the butt in the right way, right? But it's because also with respect, because obviously I'm pushing something that is not exactly. I mean, I have a parallel story, but it's not about my mother. It's not about my. And because she's Swedish. Actually, she was born in Peru, but she's Swedish. She would actually take her friends in the car and flirt herself into the embassy of Sweden to be able to get them throughout in collaboration with Edelstam, the ambassador. So I guess when I meet Lorena, the interesting part also, because for Lorena it's such a personal story to deal with all of her family in a very personal way. The collaboration that works is I have a little bit of an outside view that helped give some context to and some space for her to be who, I mean, to go through the process. I mean, how to explain that? For example, towards the end when we were getting to the film, I realized that all of the scenes that where she was crying. And I said, Lorena, the film is not going to work if you're going to be crying all the time. I was like, we need to have a few scenes where you're not crying. So we went to do one of the last scenes, if you remember, was a guy, ¿cómo se llama? In Washington, where, Peter Kornblum. So then he was I put the camera, okay, the interview is going to start, and then, okay, so tell me, so what happened when the United States in Chile? So it was the United States involved in the coup? Yes, Lorena. And then I say, Lorena, we said no crying. Peter looks at me and I say, what the hell is this guy talking about? But then at the same time, it's true that the film has a language, has a structure, so the collaboration of being able to bring different language, I mean, different perspectives into one is what makes the project what it is.
I also have to add that we had a great collaboration with Miguel also because he was very respectful of, you know, there were times that I just couldn't work on the film at all for months at a time. Also, at the very end, he said, you have to make the last decision on, you know, making the, just you tell me what needs to be done. And, you know, he's also a director in the film, but, you know, I really appreciate that trust and ultimately it was, you know, my baby. I actually gave birth to it, and that's how, you know, I think it's important to collaborate with someone that will actually respect that too.
And also, like another thing, which for me too is like when I was filming and I went to live, because I mean I forgot, but it was like a week or a long time that I was co-living in her parents' house, and suddenly I kind of became kind of transparent because like none of those scenes were actually posed. I was like, they were so involved in their situation and back and forth that suddenly they forgot that I was there, which also gives like this film like a very intimate, yeah. It's, because things were not, okay, you sit here, you sit there. No, I will go walk in and out and allow the space to happen, which was for me like a,
yeah. I think there are elements of the film that were made possible because you're in the United States and you have this independent film community. There's a history of personal documentary by women, which we don't have in Chile. You know, I think this film would have been impossible to make in Chile at the time, or even now. We're only seeing in the recent decade films that reflect back into the middle ground because Chilean filmography is split basically into the homegrown conundrum and then a whole different and separate exilic filmography, like a whole different film world happening in Paris with Jodorowsky and Ruiz and Guzman, and like a very separate narrative. So this, what I find amazing is this bridging that you're doing and the ability to reach out on both ends, because you have a very political cinema. That's what I grew up with. My family was, you know, we left 1974. I grew up here in this country, and then I moved back when you left Chile. Yeah. So I saw the tail end of the dictatorship. I didn't live a decade under the dictatorship, but I saw the emergence of what led to the plebiscite and the transition to democracy, and I was a student at the time and living this whole effervescence. So the portrayal of this period that I missed is I think is equally missing to folks who grew up around exiles who were telling their testimony of the torture and how they escaped and everything. But it was very shocking to me to go back home to Chile and realize that very few people talked about this, or that it wasn't allowed to be talked about in public spaces. So I think that films like yours, that are made collaboratively but tell intimate stories, right, contribute to this greater conversation, which is what the conversation that what Pedro Cayuqueo calls the ruca, or the long house, or the house that we're all living under. The ruca called Chile is about accepting the diversity of Chileans and their different experiences, and sharing that common space that we call Chile. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I think it's a very healing film. Now, we talked a little bit earlier also about how, curiously, no major Chilean film festival picked up this film. So this is a very, this speaks volumes to, first of all, circuits of very limited distribution of films of independent cinema in Chile. There is also an elite that makes films in Chile now. And that, clearly you don't belong to this, you're not getting the Chilean funding to make these films, and Chilean funders are not interested in telling these stories. So that's sort of one ring of the conflict, but it also speaks to the discomfort that these topics will bring up. And one thing I was suggesting, I think, was to really frame it in an educational sphere, because here we are at the university, but that it really ended up premiering at the Museum of Memory, and that's where they had their premiere. So tell us a bit about how you've managed to find that space and what happened that night.
Well, the Museum of Memory and Human Rights in Santiago is a new museum, relatively, that was built by President Michelle Bachelet, in her first term. And the museum, of course, is about the human rights and this time of history in Chile. And